Hello, I'm Arch Booth, the Executive Vice President of the National Chamber, an organization which is deeply and vitally interested in your problems. We recognize the problems that your community faces, and we know that you share them with hundreds of cities everywhere. What's involved in making your city a better place? Well, things like housing, industrial development, better streets and highways with special emphasis on parking and traffic conditions, of course. Now I'd like to have you meet two men who are thoroughly acquainted with the problems your city faces. They understand the trends and forces that created your problems, and they're developing ways to help you solve them. This is Fred Baskaw, an outstanding and respected real estate consultant. He has put together on film the story of the dynamic American city. It's an important and impressive story. It has meaning for you and your city. And this is Jim Steiner, the manager of the National Chamber's Construction and Civic Development Department. He and his staff are working every day on ways to meet the task of improving your city. Now, Fred, this motion picture shows graphically the trends and forces working constantly in all our towns and cities, does it not?
Yes, I think it does. I'm sure that you will see the exciting opportunity that exists for your city to become better. And you will see patterns and trends in this film which are mirrored in your own town or city. Perhaps most importantly, you will see the need for understanding and organization to do the vital job of making your city better for the people who are your city. This matter of getting people to work together to make their city better is something that Jim Steiner has given a lot of thought and attention to.
Jim, you and your staff have been working out ways to help meet the needs of our dynamic American cities, have you not?
We have. And the result of a great deal of research and experience has been compressed into this booklet, our Urban Development Guidebook. That's just what it is, by the way, a guidebook for you. Here are suggestions for organizing your manpower to do the job, with emphasis on the fact that it is your job. It's a local job. This booklet is a good stepping-off point to meet the problems you face in your town or city. I mention it now so that you'll know these problems can be met. There are proven ways to make your city better. Why not have your chamber secure a copy of the Urban Development Guidebook from the National Chamber of Commerce, Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, too, Fred Baskaw. I think now we're ready to have you tell us about the challenge of the dynamic American city.
In New York, there stands an impressive statue of Columbus, a reminder that this is a new continent in the light of history. America not so long ago was a continent of wilderness and open space. Excitement stirred in the hearts of a multitude of men as eyes turned toward the challenge of a new land. Now America is a land of mighty cities, and much of our space has been transformed into urban density. Practically all American cities, large and small, have a similar pattern of density. As we look closely, we see that city lots are narrow. Here is a 24-foot lot. The average city lot is 20 feet, laid out on straight streets in a gridiron pattern. It is not uncommon to find miles of 16.5-foot lots, and so we observe that the American city is a development of narrow lots. This is the first point. The American city is dense with a narrow lot pattern. Actually, we can often find lots as narrow as 12.5 feet. Is that density was a way of life for all people and included every type of residential property. A question of importance, therefore, is why did all city dwellers adjust their lives to narrow lots? The reason becomes apparent as we see our city stables. This attractive structure was built to shelter horses. Many stables still remain in our cities. These are now converted into much sought-after apartments. Not long ago, however, horses were moving in and out of this courtyard. If we are alert, we can often see a vestige of the horse and buggy era, like the hitching post. Indeed, we occasionally see old Dobbin himself. It is of the utmost importance for us to remember that throughout most of the history of civilization, man has been dependent upon animals for transportation. This, then, is the basic cause of urban density, and the third important point. Man built densely because of his reliance on horses. Having built densely on narrow lots, we created many interesting and peculiar properties. Here is a high-rise apartment house on a 22-foot lot. Rising on a horse and buggy lot, such a structure is an interesting illustration of the problem of narrow lot use. In another view, we can see a peculiar situation surrounding a city residence. This home is 20 feet wide, a common city size. And as we look above and to the sky, we see what might well be described as a fine light and air shaft for the abutting properties. Nevertheless, this type of land improvement is far from ideal in terms of land use. Again, however, it reflects the continuing influence of the horse and buggy plan. To illustrate the opposite extreme, we view a 20-foot residence rising above its abutting structures. Such a scene suggests, too, the steady pulse of urban change, a residence now completely surrounded by industry. An extremely interesting observation is to be found at Radio City, the world's largest commercial development. As we look to the ground, we see a typical horse and buggy lot still remaining on one of the busy Radio City corners. Thus we see that the narrow lot pattern tends to endure and can exert its influence on the mightiest of our commercial developments. Indeed, the density of all real estate, wherever it exists, stems directly from the primitive horse and buggy plan, and skyscrapers themselves are no exception. The American city has been amazingly dynamic despite powerful built-in limitations on land use. Let us see now if the city has remained dynamic in the face of powerful competitive forces. We do not have to look far to know that it has. New buildings are continually changing city skylines. In city after city, we can observe the framework of substantial new structures against the narrow horse and buggy properties. The contrast of 1880 and the present is becoming a common sight. The problems of our cities are real, however, because of the heavy hand of old-fashioned design. It affects residential property. Much of our industrial space presents a special problem with old multi-story buildings. The elaborate pigeon roost we see here suggests that obsolescence stalks our apartment properties. Substantial and ornate buildings are to be found everywhere. Surely obsolescence should not cause despair. It is one of the results of America's rapid growth. It is the basic challenge to cities, however, and a twofold problem: architectural obsolescence and narrow lot pattern. The truly dynamic American cities are those that are coming to grips with the problem of outmoded structures. Increasingly, we are seeing large-scale demolition as the first step in building modern cities. The need of the hour is to acquire plottage by merging narrow lots for a new start. Getting needed space in our cities for modern structures is the only way to meet the competitive force of growing suburban strength. Some of our demolition is an easy process because of much light wood construction. Often the substance of our urban structures is such as to resist the power of the demolition hammer. As a people, however, we are steadfast as we tackle problems, and the hammer of demolition will be sure to swing with determination. In this jet age, events move fast, faster indeed than we sometimes realize, and our progress is certain to be steady as we clear away the structures that block progress. Obsolescence runs through all types of property, including some of our finest mansion homes. These too will bow to demolition, and as they pass from the American scene, strategic land will be cleared for new use. To be fully dynamic, the American city must now accommodate the automobile, This is the vital factor of our new age. The poor little parking meter is not by itself a solution to automobile problems. The forward-looking city is conscious of the automobile and automobile traffic as key factors. It is responding by providing adequate, well-located parking facilities, often building skyward to create the urgently needed space. In the last analysis, the city cannot be dynamic without adequate residential accommodations. Land for residential use is a most urgent need. In Kansas City, astute private enterprise has made real achievement in residential construction on Quality Hill near downtown. It is imperative that we think of the city as a way of life, with fundamental accent on residential properties. The city, therefore, clearly remains dynamic under the force of constant change. The pulse of progress is steady. Some properties are rushing into existence, and others are rushing into discard. Alert eyes know it is inevitable that properties like these must go. It is not surprising, therefore, to return and see their removal underway. In America, we should not be impatient. All problems cannot be tackled at once. It is also new that we have hardly had time to remove the cobblestones from some of our city streets. Indeed, if you can remember the Model T, you have lived since most of the revolutionary changes in real estate. And as we go steadily forward, we see aluminum skyscrapers and stainless steel. The introduction of metals in real estate itself is revolutionary. It is difficult to believe that America is a land only recently removed from the log cabin, from primitive shelter. It is good that the state of Oregon has placed a statue of the pioneer woodsman on its capital, a beautiful reminder that the wilderness of this land was reduced to a dynamic civilization with the simple axe. What amazing achievement there has been in America. The problems of rapid growth are real but not insurmountable. Surely we must never construe density as a deterrent to city life. In many dramatic ways, we are moving in on obsolescence. We see in this setting new apartments introducing a new life. And note the proximity to office buildings, an exciting new city trend. Beauty in commercial architecture is another new revolutionary force helping our cities. Frequently we find deep setback with trees. The introduction of attractiveness in commercial real estate results in a new harmony between commercial and residential. This is revolutionary because in the past, business property was often considered repugnant. Surely the pleasing harmony here is a constructive force for good in building modern cities. Lest you conclude that we are considering only large cities, let's look at very small ones. Here is some quaint obsolescence in tiny Columbus, Indiana, common, of course, to cities large and small. Leadership in Columbus refused to despair about obsolescence. A renowned architect was retained to create new beauty. The results are inspirational. What a great contribution our design professions are making and can continue to make in our urban life. Constructive activity was extended into the downtown business area. Here we see a typical American business street as developed during the horse and buggy era. A civic-minded family of bankers decided to construct a new bank using the finest of architectural guidance. The result, a breath of new life on an obsolete street. A truly beautiful corner with contemporary style, deep setback, and trees. It is really a great contribution to community betterment. People are well served. The problems of the automobile were fully realized and planned for with the very latest in drive-in facilities. The contrast of the old and a refreshing new achievement suggests that the pulse of healthy change exists also in small communities. Further demolition and rebuilding are stimulated by every constructive achievement. Thus, the benefits spread. The story, moreover, is the same for any community, large or small. Exciting change is going on everywhere. Here, for example, is the tallest building in America to be demolished to start over. Surely we shall not demolish all our large buildings, but the lesson is clear. We live in a day of bold planning. From now on, we shall be seeing much demolition, the first step in making our cities better places to work, better places to live. It will take great effort and real leadership, but as a people we can do the jobs. And as we see here the rubble of demolition at the feet of Columbus, let us remember that in many ways the continent is still before us. Our follow-up at this point shows Columbus standing in majestic survey of the most important dynamic urban trend, the office building and the apartment building going hand in hand to demonstrate the convenience of city life. And so the city remains dynamic. Surely, if we can recapture the courage and forward-looking spirit of the discoverers and pioneers of America, building better cities will be assured.